But we begin here with our big story. The House is set to vote shortly on a Republican-led resolution to impeach Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas over his handling of the southern border. The articles of impeachment accuse Mayorkas of, quote, willful and systemic refusal to comply with the law and breach of public trust amid a surge in illegal migrant crossings. The DHS chief defending himself and his department, calling these allegations baseless, with Democrats saying the impeachment push is unconstitutional and politically motivated. Republicans have a razor-thin 3-vote majority in the House, with 2 representatives already speaking out, saying that they are against impeaching Mayorkas, Congressman Ken Buck and Tom McClintock. Buck specifically penning an op-ed for The Hill, explaining why he's a no on impeachment. The Colorado lawmaker writing Mayorkas' conduct doesn't amount to the Constitution's bar of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. And California's McClintock echoing that same sentiment in a 10-page memo that was released today, saying that his party failed to identify an impeachable crime. So joining me now is our ABC News contributor, Maria Elena Salinas, one of the most recognized Hispanic journalists in the industry. So thank you so much for being here with us, and let's dive right in. Let's dive right into the history of this, right? This is the first attempt to remove a cabinet secretary in nearly 150 years, but the nature of the crisis at the border is also historic. So is the secretary to blame for that problem?
Well, that's true. It is historic. I don't think we've ever had this many people. Of course, people have been coming to the border for years, for decades. But it's never been this level of people. So, you know, the basis for impeachment is high crimes and misdemeanors. And while Secretary Mayorkas has not been able to stop migrants from coming to the border, it's not a crime. They can accuse him if they want of being incompetent, but if they wanted to do that, but that is not a basis for impeachment. You know, the articles of impeachment claim that he was willfully refusing to apply the law. And how can you prove that it was willful, 1, and 2, migrants have the legal right to request asylum. It's not only U.S. law, but the U.S. has signed on to international agreements. They're accusing Mayorkas of replacing Trump's policy of remain in Mexico and allowing some asylum seekers under what they call a humanitarian parole into the country. And the administration claims that they don't have the resources or manpower to either detain every single asylum seeker or to speed up the process of reviewing their asylum requests.
And Maria Elena, so from your perspective, how do you see this so-called split screen, if you will, in Washington, D.C., where House Republicans are trying to impeach Mayorkas, and at the same time, they're unwilling to move forward on this bipartisan immigration bill that's in the Senate? I mean, is this hypocrisy or an altogether unpopular bill brought at an undue time?
Well, if it was an unpopular bill, why did they come up with it in the first place? It was Republicans that negotiated that bill. It was Republicans that requested that bill. And at least on the side of the House, there was no one that tried to put their input to say, well, this is how we can make it better. So it's really ironic that the very legislators that want to impeach Secretary Mayorkas for not solving the border issue are the ones that are rejecting a bill that, well, it might not solve the problem. It would ease the pressure at the border. And let's not forget that, you know, they asked for it and it was bipartisan. You know, you have to wonder how serious they are about solving the issue at the border. After all, that border bill would provide more funds for manpower, more judges. It would set limits on how many people can be processed for asylum before they shut down the border. So it seemed to have everything that they requested. So it's really, you know, you use the word hypocrisy, and unfortunately that might be it.
Right, and you question, you know, are they really serious about doing something at the border here? So on that note, we're in an election year. Republicans are playing up the border crisis. That clearly could be bad for Biden, for the administration now, and for his presidential run. Is this perhaps a political stunt on one side?
Well, I think that we can only speculate about that. We have to know that there's people that have said, we're not going to give him a win. They don't want to give the president a win. And it's also very ironic that there were so many people that not only were requesting it, but were supporting this bill. And suddenly, when President Trump said this is a stupid bill, and he insulted the bill and said that no one should support that bill, a lot of them changed their minds and step back on supporting it. So, it is politics. I mean, I think it might be politics on both sides, because this bill is not popular among Republicans or Democrats. Democrats think it's inhumane. After all, President Biden promised to deal with the border issue in a humane manner, and that is what he was attempting to do with this humanitarian parole. Humanitarian parole is what they're trying to allow, by allowing some people to come into the country, not all people to come into the country, but those that they seem to have a credible request for asylum, the elderly, families, people that are sick. Yet Democrats think that this bill didn't go far enough, and Republicans also thought the same thing. So yeah, this is politics on both sides, because neither party liked the bill, but in reality, this bill would have helped somewhat ease the pressure at the border, and no one supported it. So who's serious about solving this problem?
Right. It would have required tremendous compromise on both sides to move that forward. Maria Elena Salinas, our thanks as always to you for being with us. And I want to bring our big story now to our panel here. So joining us today is our ABC News contributor and SiriusXM radio host Mike Muse, ABC News contributor and former Republican Congressman John Katko, our Democratic strategist and co-founder at Lift Our Voice, Julie Rajinski, and ABC News contributor and op-ed columnist for the Los Angeles Times, LZ Granderson. Thank you all for being here with us. So, Mike, let's start here with you. Just on impeachments, we have seen the number of attempted impeachments soar in the past 10 years, both parties trying to impeach each other. Is this the new normal here?
Unfortunately, Kana, it seemed that way. It's seemingly that elected officials now are using the impeachment as a tool in order to gain score points with political partisanship. And that is the case right now when you look at it by the House GOP refusing to move forward and saying it's dead on arrival of this bipartisan immigration agreement that the Senate is willing to move forward. If they were serious about addressing immigration, they wouldn't look at it by trying to impeach Secretary Mayorkas, but they will be more focused on trying to find out a solution with this bipartisan agreement for immigration. That lets you know, Kana, right there, they're using impeachment as a political tool instead of using the power of legislation to really address the issue. As your guest just previously mentioned, you can't impeach somebody for what they seem incompetency, but rather no, if it reaches a high misdemeanor in crimes. And it just doesn't in this case.
Right, the argument over are you criminal or are you incompetent, and how does that play out in your job? The unfortunate part about that, though, is that there is a crisis at the border, and Republicans do blame him for being incompetent. So, John, on the sidelines, at least a little bit, this vote seems that it's clearly at risk, even for Republicans in terms of impeaching Mayorkas. They have a razor-thin majority here. Is there a political risk if they try to move forward here and then it doesn't pass?
Yeah, there's tremendous risk, but I will note that impeachment has been watered down. Mike's absolutely right. And the standard for impeachment is high crimes and misdemeanors. It's not because you don't like the job someone's doing. Our forefathers considered that when they crafted the original impeachment provision in the Constitution to make sure it was for high crimes and misdemeanors only. It just doesn't reach that bill. So, yeah, there's a lot of political risk. But I'll tell you this much. If that bill coming out of the Senate, the far right doesn't like it, and the far left doesn't like it, it's probably a pretty darn good bill. And that's what they should think about. And they should adhere to Ronald Reagan's maxim if you're a Republican. I'll take what I can get now and keep working on the rest. We don't control the White House, so we can only get so much. If we're getting anything out of this administration, we're doing great. And the last thing I'll say is this, and that is a lot of Democrats don't like that bill because we made a lot of progress. And they agreed to things they would have never agreed to 6 months ago, and that's a good thing. So this is crazy to me.
Yeah, you're right, though. You look at the moderates here, not at the far right, not at the far left, and that's an interesting perspective. Julie, to you, Republican Representative Tom Cole, he even said this impeachment attempt was about accountability, though. He says that Secretary Mayorkas has done all he can to secure the border. It's a big question there. Does more blame, though, need to be placed on the Biden administration for the crisis at the border?
Well, let me just say first and foremost, I don't think both parties have used impeachment as a political tool. I don't recall Democrats ever impeaching anybody for anything other than a high crime and misdemeanor. And in this case, of course, Mayorkas has not been exposed to any kind of high crimes and misdemeanors. The one thing I will say is that the Biden administration, you may not like their policies. You may not like the way they've addressed the border. They're trying to do something about it. The president wants this bill passed. It's very bizarre to me that Republicans, on the one hand, are saying that not enough has been done at the border, so let's impeach Secretary Mayorkas. On the other hand, they're saying, oh, wait, but we're not going to do anything to fix the border, although there's a perfectly good bill sitting there on their desk waiting for them to vote on. So it's completely innocuous, and it just shows the cult of personality that they've been enthralled to for the last 7 or 8 years.
And LZ, to you, I mean, we're in this situation because the Biden administration let the situation at the border get out of control. I mean, is that the reasoning behind this here? Do we need to point a finger at them?
Well, certainly you need to point a finger at them in terms of the narrative that's being had right now. Because President Biden didn't show up to Texas until 2023 on the border. And because of that, he allowed basically a 2-year window in which narrative was set by his political opponents. And not just his political opponents, but also by people along the border who are actually concerned about the problem. You know, I've done reporting in Eagle Pass, I've done reporting in El Paso, I've witnessed for myself, and these are very, very fair-minded communities who don't have the resources for this. And the president visually was not there for 2 years, allowing Governor Abbott to set the narrative and set the tone and begin this legal sort of seesaw we've been witnessing. And so while I do believe this impeachment is nothing but a sham and is politically motivated, the fact of the matter is it's exasperated by the fact there was an absence there and a narrative allowed to be set. Accurate or not, that's what happened politically.
And that is how it's playing out, and that is how people are taking it. And Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, and Kate, I just want to jump in really quickly, underscore what Julie said. I think Julie just said something really profound here. Your first question that you asked was absolutely right. It was more so about sometimes the constituencies on both sides, Republican and Democrats, often want impeachment for some things they're frustrated with. But to what Julie said, though, if you think about what happened the first go-around with Nancy Pelosi, the first time the Democratic constituency wanted her to move forward with articles of impeachment on President Trump. After that, special counsel report came out. But Nancy Pelosi said, no, there's just not enough evidence here that speaks to the level of high crimes and misdemeanor to which John Katko was talking about. And so I think that I just wanted to underscore that because that was a really great point that Julie just made. The distinction between elected officials versus the constituents.
Yeah, all right, everybody, Mike, John, Julie, and LZ, our thanks to all of you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.